One thing I'm gonna say is that if we look at this in black and white, the color of this purple is so similar to the color of her skin that I would either make this much lighter or much darker, like little pink socks. And honestly, at this point, I'm just having fun.
Well, they look pretty distinct to me. This must have been like a light brown and a dark purple. Now, before I continue, I want to say no hate to the creator. I just want to talk about gray out similarity. Now, why is a color wheel a wheel and not a strip? For color selection purposes, a strip would be more efficient. It takes up less space than a color wheel. It's not as clunky. I mean, you could basically do all the same things with a color wheel when you cut a color strip when it comes to color selection. So why do we use a color wheel? It's not efficient. Well, a color wheel helps with concept execution and finding out which colors blend well together. A color wheel is designed to point out contrast, like how green and red are opposites and how we know yellow and purple are opposites. And less commonly said, I think, is how orange and blue, well, this type of blue, are opposites. Now, from this moment on, all this is more of like my perspective as more of a conceptual thing. Mixing each of these normally will give you brown. But if you're doing it additively, like with the RGB method, green and red will give you yellow. However, yellow and purple still give you brown. Now, how do I use this? Well, illustration, I do something I like to call pinching. Like, for example, here I have red and blue mixed in equal amounts, which gives us violet, but they're not like an equal distance from each other. But if you have dark blue and dark red, well, not dark red, dark blue and normal red, it gives you almost this purple, gives you this purple, which is, even though purple itself is like a color, it is closer to this blue than it is to this red because of its frequency. That's why these two are closer to each other than these two. When I'm talking about color pinching, like how these two are opposites and they come together. And so brown sits somewhere around here. It's somewhere in this area. So it'll be better if I erase all that. Brown sits here somewhere in this area. Well, if you want it like a peach color, you would mix some mixture of like, well, you could use yellow if you want. They'll just make it farther. But you use some variant of orange and yellow. It's right here. Or you could go from like red to yellow. I mean, peach is somewhere in this area. And it gives you all of these very similar in frequency closeness colors. So even if two colors are like a similar hue, or rather luminance, these are actually closer in frequency to this. Now, when I gray all of them out, these two are, well, it's not fully desaturated. They're all hard to tell apart. I will get into that later, because it's not about whether or not the colors are similar that make them hard to tell apart. I would say like it's, if you want to grayscale your art, it is, yeah, look at it in more of like two dimensions. Or, well, I look at it more of like two dimensions. Now, moving on from this being here, if you mix a darker red with a lighter blue, obviously same thing happens with burgundy being closer to, well, the red than blue is. And that's because of their frequency and wavelength. Now, whether or not colors are similar is, determined by their frequency and luminance. Now, colors are limited by their brightness and what color they are. But this color here is the color that would be like really hard to tell apart from this purple. If I were to sample it, it's some specific color. It's hashtag 27904. Even though it's far from like purple, it's closer to yellow than it is purple. Like, despite that, because these colors are all closer in similarity to purple than these colors are, because of its luminance, and mostly its luminance, its frequency, if I were to draw the two, this green here, and then I were to sample this brown, and I were to draw it here, and then I were to sample this purple, this green, if I remember correctly, will look very similar to this purple in color. Yeah, these two harder to tell apart than this one because it's closer to this purple than this brown. Which is funny to think about because if you go back here to like what I mentioned earlier, this, oh, hold on. To go back here to what I mentioned earlier, this is roughly where brown is, and this is where green is from purple. It is farther away and less similar than brown, but it contrasts harder because of its luminance. Now, why is any of this important? Well, none of it's important. None of it's really important. Art is partially a knowledge thing and a way of thinking. If you can change your perspective of how you view colors and how you think about shapes and how you draw, and how you connect the rules together beyond the fundamental understanding, you can improve without just, drawing every day and making little scribbles like it's muscle memory. And it can allow you to be able to do things like use entirely one color to create vibrant and distinct pictures that could stand up to this test. Oops. If I could just quickly go do that. And still tell the people distinctly from the stairs and the overhangs, and the shadows and from where they are because of their shape and form. But also, I can tell that these two are different colors. And that so are these two. Well, not different colors, different luminances, I'm sorry. Different brightnesses. Anyway, that's all I want to talk about. Just a little info dump on the topic.